Today I want to show off two super underrated vehicles within World of Tanks that I think everyone should know about and certainly not underestimate, and that of course starts with the T20. Now this is the tier 7 American medium tank that is actually very good, and I found it to be super fun, and I think a lot of you guys would enjoy it as well. And if you do enjoy this vehicle, why not hit the like button on this video? But more importantly is, how can this tank actually work in your favor if you do decide to get it? Why should you get it? And also, how can you kind of play against this sort of vehicle if you're in a similar sort of vehicle? So that's what today's video is going to be about, alongside some other vehicles as well, or at least one in particular. So with that being said, this is of course Lakeville using the T20 in more of a spotting position at the beginning of the game. Now this is a top tier matchup, so it is the perfect matchup in terms of what you could expect with this vehicle. Obviously playing up against tier 9s is considerably harder because of the fact that you do have to deal with people that have probably better view range than you for the most part. However, when you are in these top tier games, you do feel quite kind of, I guess, top tier when it comes to how you can actually perform. You've got good view range, you've got really good mobility for a medium tank, you've also got really nice gun handling and statistics, and when you combine all of those things, you end up with a really fun, great vehicle that I think a lot of people underestimate. So straight off the bat, you can see here he's going after the little pesky E25, and if he can remove him from the game, it will make things later on down the line a hell of a lot easier to play with. But of course, with the light tank being taken out in the middle, it opens this game up just that tad little bit to be able to kind of move into different positions. Now there is that E25, and considering that the two tanks are basically fighting for the view range of the middle, it's really down to the T20 to try and remove him from the game, or at least support his teammates in the town such that they can all kind of push together against the E25 and remove it pretty quickly. But that's exactly what he does. He pushes into the town. This is one of the plays that you want to be doing when you see that your teammates are under pressure. However, a little bit unlucky to not pen the Tiger P there. However, it was quite a steep angle in the first place, but now he can kind of try and remove these guys. The Tiger 131 is out of the game, and now he's got a juicy Tiger P, and I'm sure all of the Tiger P drivers out there probably crying with what they're seeing here. And yeah, I do feel bad against the Tiger P, but he's gone, he's out of the game, and he's back in the garage potentially to choose a much better tank. But there you go, gets hit by the Excalibur. So we know that the Excalibur is somewhere in the back. He looks like he's going to be in the bush line over here, which is a good position for him, but trying to push an Excalibur who has very good camo and is probably going to farm you before you get there, it's probably not the best idea. And when the enemy team are pushing the base pretty hard, you've got to do a little bit of covering from that position. The E25, or one of them, actually gets spotted towards the base, so if you can get rid of him, that would be perfect. Goes for a blind fire. We don't know if it hits just yet. So with that being said, so far the game has gone pretty well. He's got nearly 1,000 actual assistance damage, but also 1,300 actual damage, and yeah, just under 2,500 combined damage. So with that being said, the Skoda T25 is pushing to get behind his KV-1S, but this is where he's got to help him out. Can he get him? Yes, he can. So the T20 has this 240 alpha damage gun, which is actually very powerful in how it plays. It gets decent penetration, obviously firing some premium rounds here, most likely because he was trying to go for his marks of excellence. And in a tier 9 game, when you're playing up against the super heavies, the standard penetration that this tank gets is not insane. It's down at 160, so significantly worse than you would hope for when you do play something like this. But at this point, the KV-1S is trying to make a flanking play against the KV-3, which is actually working out alright because he's had some team support from the T20. But can he get another one in here? Yes, he can. Hopefully the KV-1S will come and try and help him. But there's still a little KV-2 somewhere in the back. He puts one into the lower plate, and really it's all about just trying to move backwards. The KV-3 fluffs his shot, allowing him to get an easy shell into the upper plate, or at least the frontal flat plate of the upper plate of the KV-3. So a really nice result there. and works quite well. I always love seeing this sort of stuff come out and work really nicely. But this game, it's not gone so well so far. There is, well, he's down by what? 1,500 damage. He bounces off of an Excalibur, which is almost unheard of. Probably hitting the mantlet of the Excalibur, which is just horrible. And so with that being said, he's now got to try and reposition into a better spot. The Excalibur, as I said earlier, has pretty good DPM, and yeah, with an E25 scurrying his way from behind, needs to get rid of him so we can kind of do something here. But obviously, when you're in a tank like this that doesn't have that much kind of armor, you have to be quite careful in where you're spending your hit points, and the T20 does it quite well because the alpha damage of this tank is pretty good. It has 240, as we said, but it also isn't coming up against a whole lot of vehicles that do have, you know, 390 alpha. There are some at tier 7, but with that being said, it's not a huge amount of vehicles at tier 7 that have 390, and so realistically you can outtrade a lot of people with this tank, which makes it work quite well. You can see here the enemy team, they're kind of pushing into him, and this is where the enemy team make the biggest misplay. They're just not giving credit to the T20, and you can see here he's just absolutely farming him. This VK302M, not quite sure what he was doing, maybe a new player, not too surprised, but this little Churchill is of course AFK, and you'd hope that with the Churchill on your team he would actually be playing, as it'd make it a hell of a lot easier for this game to be pulled off. But of course he's trying to go for the T20 here. I'm not surprised because he knows the Churchill's actually AFK, so obviously the Excalibur has some level of intellect within this game, and so the T20 knows he now needs to get rid of the Excalibur as quickly as possible because there's a KV2 lurking around, and you can see here he does manage to hit him, but he is now an absolute one-shot for almost every tank in the game. If the artillery hits him, it's going to take him out. If the KV2 hits him, it's going to take him out. So he has to play quite carefully here, and so as well as being ammo racked, he's now knows where the artillery is positioned over here on the enemy side, completely in the opposite direction. But they are currently being capped, so the cap timer on this map on encounter is very long. It's over 3 minutes, which means it gives him time to actually go and try and get into a better spot. However, with this game, you never know if the artillery is actually going to make their way into the cap. I would assume at this point, as the T20 driver here has, that it would be the KV2 in the cap circle. So with that all being said, he's now got to try and position himself to try and get a shot on the KV2, but also avoid being hit by the artillery. And so when you're in a pretty paper vehicle, you have to kind of do that quite well. And so that's exactly what he's trying to do. He's trying to get into a spot where he can either A, take out the artillery so he doesn't have to worry about them, allowing him to be a lot more flexible within the game, which is what you should do in all of your games, regardless of if you're playing the T20, is kind of prioritizing the targets that you're fighting against to make it a lot easier for yourself to actually do what you need to do. Now, as I said, there is an enemy artillery that's just jumped in the cap circle, but luckily he finds the M44 here, who is most likely going to spot him, but apparently he doesn't, and so he puts another one into him, but he's only got 50 seconds now to go and reset the cap, and with a full health GW Panther and a KV2, who we have no idea where exactly in that cap circle they're going to be. Uh-oh, the GW Panther's made a misplay. Can he get one in here? And he can. Lovely. Resets, gives himself a little bit of extra time, but oh, did the KV2 spot him? No, he didn't, and the KV2's probably not looking the right way, which makes it an easy reset on the KV2. However, he doesn't pen him, which is a little bit disappointing, because that would have made it a hell of a lot easier for him to carry this game. And certainly the enemy team have not given the T20 enough credit in this game. So I'll be interested to see whether you guys, if you've played the T20, found this vehicle good, whether you found it bad, or whether you found it in that kind of medium range, because I certainly think it is a very, very hidden gem-esque vehicle, whereby a lot of people just don't realise that the tank is as good as it is. And so with him now pushing over here, he does spot the KV2, but only a minuscule portion of the KV2, and can he get a shot into him? He goes for it, he does hit, but for 180, that must be nearly a minimum roll on the KV2 there. In fact, wait, it was a min. So either way, he does hit the KV2 there. Unfortunately, doesn't manage to do what he should have done, but it's time to kind of push around the side and see if he can crop up from a different location and just keep the enemies guessing at all times. And it's going to make it a lot harder for them to understand where you're going to be. So that's why he keeps moving around. It's what you should do in the game if you're in these sort of pressure situations where you have to kind of play well, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, I would assume, given that someone has got out of the cap on the enemy team, that it is most likely going to be the KV2. And so with that, he does sit behind the bush, but unfortunately does get spotted either way, and he finishes off the GW Panther. But the KV2 has got out of the cap, which means he's going to be trying to get an angle on the T20, and so he needs to move away, get further back, use the view range to try and make it work. And the Churchill is of course AFK, as one of his teammates is asking the challenger in the chat. So with that being said, 4.8 thousand damage within this game, and very, very kind of sketchy in how it's going to play. The KV2 comes out with his backside to him. He's got the small gun, the KV2. He doesn't seem to be aware that the T20 is behind him. He didn't stop and turn and try and aim. He in fact got back behind the cover, which I guess is somewhat viable, but he's then reversing out, which allows him to get another free shot into him. But he is now in a position where he's probably a one-shot for the T20, so all he has to do is spot this KV2 and come from a different location and see if he can get that final shot into him, making this one of the best T20 games that I've ever seen, and certainly been playing very, very well with regards to keeping on moving, changing all sorts of destinations, and getting to different positions as these sorts of tank require you to do if you want to have these brilliant games. So either way, he's moving into the middle location, seeing if the KV2 does make the misplay of kind of going into one of the spots where you can actually see. So for example, over here you can sometimes get shots into people, you can see them, and so he's pushing around, trying to go all the way around the map back to where the Churchill is, and most likely come from behind the KV2 where he's least likely to expect him to come from, which you have to commit in some of these games if you want to win them. But KV2, did that pen actually happen when he hit him blind? Because that is the decider. If he didn't, it's going to mean he's going to have to hit him twice, which means that, yeah, it could be quite a bad situation. But the KV2 is not expecting him to come from this location, and he shuts him down, and that is where movement within World of Tanks becomes one of your biggest allies, and how the T20 as a whole works really well, both in mobility, damage, and yeah, a really, really fun one to see. So like it if you did enjoy that replay, but we've got another one coming up now. And so this next game comes in the form of the CS52 list, the Polish medium tank, and a premium one at that actually I feel like people know that it's decent, but do they know how good it is? And hopefully you do, because if you do and you've played it, then I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are as well, because I found this vehicle to be a very, very powerful and great vehicle that works very well when it's playing up against all sorts of tiers, whether that's tier 10 or also the lower tiers. Obviously, if you're playing in the lower tiers, this tank is much more competitive. The armor works sometimes in the lower tier matchups, so you can actually bounce a few rounds. In higher tier matchups, it definitely doesn't. At the end of the day, it's similar to what you would see with the T-44, the Soviet medium tank at tier 8. But of course, with this one, you do get a really, really nice main armament with some nice side skirts as well, which act as spaced armor and can help you out in some situations where you want to try and side scrape. And here you go. This is the case in point of what not to do with the CS52, which is expose the full frontal armor of it to the opponent, doing a kind of a side scrape, which is the anti-side scrape, where you showcase your lower plate first and of course allow for an easy shot into it. But there's a VKM that's made his way down, and so with that being said, it's time to go and farm him. and when you have such a good reload speed that this tank does, it makes it quite easy to do that. And so with a little tracking shot, the VK has burnt his repair kit there, or at least potentially, and so he puts another one in there, tracks him again, and so he's locked down in place, allowing him to take a full reload. And now the T-34-85 decides to come around, who's of course maybe a little bit triggered that his friend there has been pumped, and so he decides to get rammed to death, and goodbye and good riddance. But there's still that tank left alive. Oh, there's a KV2 as well who takes a shot there, and our friend in the VKM gets removed from this game by the Scorpion. And the KV2 is about to join them back in the garage as well. So yeah, definitely not expecting that, I don't think, the KV2 anyway. So what do you do now in this sort of position? Well, there's still that CS52 on the enemy team, and when you're a top tier in the game, you have to help out your team with the other top tier tanks. It's no good just focusing the lower health and lower tier vehicles such as the T-34 and stuff like that. You do have to kind of push in to give your team a bit of support against those higher tier tanks. Otherwise, the exact opposite is going to happen to your team, or the exact same, I guess, when it comes to them just steamrolling your lower tiers. So if you can protect them and give them a bit of a hand, then it's going to work out a lot better. So the CS52 is on a ridiculously low amount of hit points compared to our CS52. And so with that being said, and the 87 being close, maybe a flanking play is going to work quite well here, but he has to be quite careful of the Panther M10, who's to the side and can get a shot through the side of this tank. The CS is looking the different way, which I guess he was trying to get some shots into the side. He pulls back to try and get behind this rubble pile, and yes, he does manage to do it, allowing him to get an extra shot into the CS before he's able to get one back into him, allowing him to successfully remove this guy pretty quickly, and he's back in the garage as well. That is 2 tanks taken out by our player here in the CS. So with that all being said, the game is not looking all too good. There's 7,000 hit points on the enemy team versus the 5,000 on his team, so he's going to have to pull back some of that advantage in this game if he wants to succeed and win. But a little bit unlucky on the Panther M10 there. It goes into the dirt. It was a bit of a rough shot to actually hit, so you know, sometimes that does happen. But now he's trying to get some shots into, of course, the people that are pushing his base, and certainly the people that are close to the cap circle, as there is someone in there doing a little bit of a capping mentality. But with everything that's going on at the minute, he needs to push some of these vehicles. There's no point in him sitting back and resting on his laurels if it means that the enemy team are going to cap, or maybe another one gets in the cap circle, which is what you definitely don't want. And oh, he finds himself a T-34-85M who for some reason is out in the open, so best to get him out of the game, as you don't want to get hit by that guy, because although it is a tier 6, it actually has reasonable DPM for a tier 6 vehicle. But oh gosh, there's a SMV now pushing over, which is not the tank that you want to see. So instead of going over that side, he actually pops over to this side, which is a decent play, because in order for the SMV to get a shot into him, he's going to have to come all the way over. And in coming all of the way over, the lower plate's exposed and the SMV doesn't aim properly, allowing him to essentially pick this guy up for free. And can he do it? Yes, he can. And there you go. Has to be very careful with the artillery that is behind him, because that could be a real pain in the backside, quite literally. But with the Panther M10, of course, over in the cap circle, by the looks of things, who doesn't seem to be on the best of terms with this guy, he's hoping he can remove him from the game without taking a hit, which he does successfully, and up to 4k damage. So you can see how kind of brawler vehicle this is when it comes to World of Tanks. And that's exactly what you want from a medium tank that has this sort of brawler mentality. It does work, although maybe not against the artillery pieces who have been focusing you the entire game. Now, 5 enemies have been taken out. He's on 378 hit points, which means if both artillery hit him or splash him, it is going to be all over. And also there are some pretty dangerous vehicles on the enemy team, the TNH 105 and the Staghound, and there's also packing up by the enemy team where they're all kind of in one area. So with that being said, he's going to go for the artillery, needs to get them out really if there's any chance of winning this game, and hoping that the 87 can deal with a couple of the last remaining tanks over there. And so going for the artillery, it removes the RNG out of the game. He's aiming and he gets a nice little HE round in there, securing the enemy and picking up another kill with 6 kills so far. But the GW Panther is available for another shot, and there he goes. But the 87 has fallen down on the other flank against the M2Y and the Staghound, but it's unknown exactly how many hit points they're on, because maybe the M2Y did take a couple of hits in that engagement against the 87, which would make it a little bit easier for him to try and carry this game. Now they're both lower tier vehicles, so it is potentially within the realm of him being able to win this game, but it does mean if they are on 1400 damage combined that he is going to have to hit at least 5 shells to remove them from the game, roughly, when it comes to the CS52. And one of them's just got in the cap, which, given how quickly someone's just got in the cap, I would be expecting that it is a Staghound who has just knocked over the tree directly in front. And there you go, there he is, exactly in front. You saw the player here just going for the blind fire on that bush. Maybe he hit him, maybe he didn't. Unfortunately, he didn't in that engagement, but either way, he can now start to try and push. And by going up here, he sees if he can see the M2Y, which he does. Can he get a shot into him though? Yes, he can. And the Staghound is trying to make a maneuver where he's coming from behind. He does hit him in pen, which is surprising for the tier 6 vehicle, and so it makes him a definite one shot for both, or well, for one of these vehicles, the M2Y, and then just basically if the Staghound can get around from behind, it's going to be all over. But unfortunately for the Staghound, he's gone as well, which puts him in a 1 versus 1 against the M2Y. And this is why I love watching replays of some of these lower mediums, and certainly some of the mediums that people don't necessarily see as much in these lower tier games. And yeah, hopefully you guys do enjoy watching some of this sort of stuff, or if you have alternatives that you actually want to see, or you have any replays that you want to see in particular, then feel free to actually send them down in the comment section down below. Or of course, if you have the replay file, then you can send it to the email in the description of this video as well. But with that being said, this game is now getting neck and neck. It is a 1 versus 1. The M2Y is not a one shot, and so it means he's going to have to hit him twice. The M2Y can hit him once and take him out. So what's he going to do? As with the T20 game, he's going to surprise him by coming through from a different direction, and then hopefully the M2Y isn't looking and he can get one of those shots off for free, and then hopefully avoid taking any more damage. So when you're a top tier vehicle, you can use view range to your advantage because you have better view range most of the time. And so that's exactly what he's going to try and do. He's going to go all the way around and see where he can come from, and see if he can just manage to spot this guy out in the open looking the wrong way. And that's what he manages to do right here. Is the M2Y going to actually see him here? He doesn't actually spot him, which allows for a free shot of damage into the side, but the M2Y is almost certainly going to spot him there. Oh wait, he doesn't, which means that now he's free to try and get that final shot into this guy, but he's going to have to go all the way around, and hopefully with the speed of the CS52 he can actually get there before this guy makes his way all the way around the hill to make it impossible for him to hit him. So that's why he's going towards the castle here to try and get that shot into the side of the guy. He is actually staying in the cap circle, which is definitely a misplay by the M2Y here, as he would be better off actually making his way over to a different location, because it basically tells the CS exactly where the M2Y actually is. And so with that being said, he's unsure whether he's actually behind the bush or whether he's going to be in a different spot. So he does find him, he is behind the bush, and there you go, a free shot into the back of the M2Y. Finishes this game off with 6,000 damage, 9 enemies taken out by the CS, and a fantastic set of results from both the T20 and the CS list. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did and you want to see some more, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, as we'll be doing a hell of a lot more videos than we've been doing recently, and hopefully you'll join me in those if you enjoyed it.